Hello everyone, we're going to be doing a study on the book of Revelation chapter 12, which is Satan being kicked out of heaven. I'm going to start here in verse 1. There appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered. So the woman represents Israel, and her child is Christ, the Messiah. The sun depicts her as God's chosen nation. The moon under her feet alludes to God's promise of dominion. And the crown of 12 stars pictures royalty and relates to the 12 tribes of Israel. The birth pains refer to the period before the birth of Christ, when Israel was waiting for redemption by the Messiah. Verse 3. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his heads. And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. So the dragon is identified as Satan in verse 9. The third part of the stars of heaven appear to be the fallen angels who followed Satan in his original rebellion against God. Verse 5. And she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. So the man-child is Christ, destined to rule all nations as the Messiah. He was caught up unto God and to his throne at his ascension into heaven. The wilderness represents anywhere outside Palestine. During the last half of the tribulation period, Israel will take refuge among the Gentile nations, where God will care for her. Verse 7. And there was war in the heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So the vision of war in heaven anticipates Satan's exclusion from heaven and his restriction to the earth during the last half of the tribulation. Michael the archangel is the leader of God's holy angels. Satan is the chief of the fallen angels. At the middle of the tribulation period, God will empower Michael and his forces to cast Satan and his forces out of access to heaven, so that Satan most thereafter confine his activities to the earthly sphere or flat earth. Just kidding. Whatever one you want to choose to believe. Verse 10. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, Now is come salvation and strength in the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ, for the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb, by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto the death. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. So the last half of the tribulation will be a time of terrible trouble on earth. It will be Satan's final attempt to prevent the return and the reign of Christ. He has only a short time to try to prevent the establishment of Christ's kingdom. But we all know that it's going to be set up regardless of what he wants, and therefore he has great wrath and intensifies his persecution of Israel, God's chosen nation, while setting up his own counterfeit kingdom through the beast, the false Messiah. So that's the Antichrist thinking that he's going to really take over the world and that Jesus is not going to come back. But as we know, Jesus comes back at the end of that 7-year tribulation, which is the 7-year peace treaty signed by the Antichrist between the Palestinians and the Israelites. Jesus comes back at the end of that 7-year period. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. And that is a very short time indeed, in comparison to the history of the world. Verse 13. When the dragon saw that he was cast unto the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man-child. And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great angel, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time, and times, and half a time, from the face of the serpent. So, Satan's persecution of Israel is apparently an attempt to exterminate God's chosen people, thereby preventing the fulfillment of God's promises to Abraham and David and the Messianic kingdom. But God protects Israel. The wilderness symbolizes the Gentile nations of the world, where believers will help to hide Jews from the Antichrist's persecution. The eagle represents America in Daniel 7:4. So the question is, will America be the place where the Jews are protected? And we will have to find that out during that time. Verse 15. And the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth. And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. So the flood symbolizes overwhelming evil and persecution. Satan, through the Antichrist and his forces, will persecute the Jews throughout the world. But the Gentile believers of the earth will receive them and hide them. The remnant may be a reference either to 1, the Jewish believers who have refused to worship Satan and his beast, or 2, Gentile believers who are the seed of Abraham through Christ. The last half of the tribulation period will see a worldwide persecution of those who genuinely believe in Jesus Christ. So that was Revelation chapter 12. Next chapter we'll be getting into will be chapter 13, the beast. I pray you guys have an amazing day. God bless you guys. I will see you guys in the next one. Shalom.